lying on an Iron Maiden for 15 minutes.
Trying to prepare myself for that sort of sensation, it can be quite a shock.
Didn't realise I had such fat hands.
You know, you can go through it, or equally, definitely do nothing at all.
Yo, what's going on, guys? Rhys here from More Than Lifting. This is the More Than Lifting podcast with me and my good friend Chris Thatcher. Do you want to say hi, mate?
Hello.
Hello. We're both personal trainers from the UK, doing things like handstands and other bodyweight kind of work. Chris likes doing some weight stuff, and I'm sure we're going to talk about a bit of that at some point in the show. Otherwise, we kind of had a bit of a serious episode last week, I'd say, probably. What about you, mate? It was a bit serious, wasn't it?
I don't know, I wouldn't say it was that serious, but it was very to the point and very factual, and hopefully people took a lot of useful information from it, which, you know, is probably more than you can say about a lot of our episodes.
Yeah, so we're going to go back to the regular old way this time. We're just going to mess around a bit and just have a little chat about what we've been up to, what training we've been doing. Obviously, it's going to be super insightful, so do listen to it. Don't just tune off now because it's not about training equipment. And yeah, so that's cool. Oh, before I start, I do want to say I'm going to be doing a webinar on the 30th, which is a Monday. You can go to the landing page. I can't remember what it is right now. morethanlifting.com/live. There you go. Go to morethanlifting.com/live, and you can sign up there, and we'll have a live webinar. I'll just talk you through all the kind of getting started with calisthenics, kind of getting into it all, and then we'll go into more advanced stuff like programming skills into your training once you've kind of got the foundation exercises down, which I'm sure everyone's bored of hearing about, and that kind of bridge is quite interesting, and that's when it gets really fun. So we'll go into that as well, a nice little deep dive live conversation for you. So yeah, go to morethanlifting.com/live for that. Promo over, Chris. Now let's talk about some silly stuff. What's been going on?
In training or in life?
Just things, mate. What
Things.
What have you been up to?
I have been doing some refurbishment work on my house, so stripping out a kitchen, which has been fun because, you know, it's nice to see things sort of things taking shape in anticipation of everything new being fitted, but there's a hell of a lot of work to be done in the meantime. That in itself has impacted on my training a little bit, because last Sunday doing a lot of lugging around in and out of vans with rubble and just, you know, doing some general heavy lifting, which, you know, wasn't as controlled as it would be in a gym environment, which is good because, you know, there's a lot of stuff that would be far more hazardous and risky if I didn't do training, and, you know, hadn't built the kind of requisite strength and mobility that I have over time, because I'm having to contort myself into a variety of different positions just to get around corners and be able to move stuff.
Bending round corners like a snake, slithering.
Well, it is. I mean, I do end up finding myself in these really weird positions where I just think no one else would be doing this, or not, you know, a lot of people wouldn't be doing this. They'd have found probably another workaround, or it'd be a two-man job, because, you know, you just can't normally get someone into that position. So, you know, I'm adamant that I'm going to do it, and I'm going to save time by doing it myself rather than trying to get someone else to help me. So I do these things, and they're great, but obviously, you know... Man
stuff.
What?
It's proper man stuff, isn't it? Like, oh no, I'll do it. I'll carry the whole sofa by myself. Like, you can't carry but you probably could carry the whole sofa, but it's so bloody awkward, the shape of it. Like, why? Don't even bother. Just get someone to hold the other end.
It's not so much the carrying. I mean, you have to, you know, understand your limitations with those things. If, you know, something really does need two people, then it needs two people. It's more getting up and under things, or around things, you know, under units, under pipe work, you know, just positioning yourself in such a way that, you know, you are pretty much wrapped completely around some sort of piece of furniture or whatnot.
Oh yeah, like twister fashion.
Yeah, or I'm kind of crouched under some units on a work surface, up behind a wall or something. And anyway, it's just, you know, just stuff that has to be done. And
sounds like a train station in Wales.
Interesting. So yeah, that just impacted on my training this week, because it was just a lot of work. And when I hit the gym on Monday, didn't feel bad at all, just a little bit stiff, nothing major. But after a few sets of deadlifts, I realised that my back wasn't very, very happy. So I just put that down purely to a lot of twisting under load and, you know, general carrying work that had been done, you know, the day before. So just had to be quite smart about training this week. And as frustrating as it is to go off program, so to speak, And a lot of the components of the program I'm working on at the moment stayed in. There was just some stuff that had to come out. I really had to take out a lot of the lower body work that I'd be doing, anything that created any real force onto the back. So deadlifts, squats, cleans, snatches, anything like that really just had to come out, because my back just wasn't going to be very happy with me if I tried to push through. And there are times when you can just go through a little bit, but as we've talked about endlessly on this show before, you really need to listen into your body. And even after all these years of training, I still really have to pay attention to that. It's not just an automatic, all right, that's achy, I'll just stop. I do have to sort of listen and think, no, come on. You can go through it, or equally, definitely do nothing at all. And having backed off it the last 3 or 4 days, it's felt a hell of a lot better. So I'm happy about that. But yeah, so that's been my life really, and just general business bits and pieces. A couple of exciting opportunities presented themselves this week that I want to follow through on. And yeah, life is good, mate. Life is very good.
Oh, nice. That's good. That's good to hear.
Good to hear.
Of course. I've been training.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's been quite fun. my planche is like just there now. It's really nice. I'm happy with it. That's good. So my Christmas goals have finally come through. Like, I've fixed it up. I'm back in the flow, and I've been working on more handstand transition. So I'm slowly moving towards like the handstand into planche, and I've been working on the drop to elbow lever and then returning. It's called like a 90-degree push-up, that kind of. So you come down, and I wanna do it in the 100 push-up challenge like later in the year. So I want to be able to do 20 of them basically. So yeah, getting them in at the minute, like working on that. Return is the hardest part.
Is that on handles, do you say, or is that's on hands?
On the floor.
On the floor, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, well, I train it in both sides of the thing, and it would definitely be easier with parallettes. That was something to grab onto, but I don't have them readily available all the time, and it takes you an extra couple of inches up towards the ceiling if you're doing them indoors, so it's not always best.
Have you ever done handstands of any kind, or particularly handstand press-ups or wall press-ups, or wall handstands on your knuckles?
No.
Okay, just curious. That's something I dabbled with for a while. I found it, similarly to using parallettes or handles, it was just a workaround for relieving wrist pain, but challenging stability a little bit more.
Yeah. It's a good thing to try, isn't it? It would mean you couldn't use your grip so much on the ground to help control your handstand.
Oh, it massively limits that. Yeah.
Yeah, so you would rely on it would probably force you to keep your body a lot tighter, whilst you were, particularly if you're trying to do like push-ups, for example, it would like force that kind of tension more, wouldn't it? I think.
Yeah, definitely.
That's what I feel, how you'd compensate for it.
Yeah, I couldn't speak to it in terms of a freestand handstand. This was only wall stands, so just I had that support with the wall anyway. But it was just something from martial arts where you're always encouraged to do press-ups on knuckles to toughen the hands, do right by the wrist, so to speak, and obviously challenge the shoulders more through stability. And generally speaking, I tend to do pretty much all my press-ups on knuckles now. I very rarely do them with wrist flexed. If I do any press-ups at all, it just feels more comfortable.
But just regular ones, or do you just not tend to do a lot of variations?
No, just any kind of press-up, really. Just tend to do them on just the first 2 knuckles of my hand now, because I've just got used to doing them that way, because it's how you're taught in martial arts to do them, and it's just automatic now. It almost feels it's weird, because my wrists are fine in a handstand position. As soon as I start doing press-ups, I'm very, with my hands planted, I'm very aware.
You're really weak in it.
Well, it's not so much weak, I'm just very aware that it's like, I can feel my wrists, whereas normally I have no sensation in my wrists, because, they're out of the equation when you're on your knuckles. Creates more depth to the press up as well, because you're higher up off the floor. So there's more range.
You've got that little extra bit, haven't you? Like
exactly.
An inch or so.
You've got another wall. You've basically got the length of your palm, effectively. So what's that? About 2 inches extra depth potential.
Yeah, but you think you've also got the width of your palm on the floor, haven't you? So like it's. There is quite a big difference now. I line them up together. Blimey, didn't realise I had such fat hands.
Maybe they grow.
If anyone knows of any good hand slimming exercises.
Leanmitts.com.
I love lean mitts. Is that a joke or is that a real thing?
No, that was a joke.
It was awesome, man.
But it could be a business. I mean, look, you know,
lean mitts.
we have
let's
legs,
get it.
bums, and tums. I was actually talking to my girlfriend the other day. I haven't looked into it, but I didn't know if anyone had come up with the boobs, belly, and bum workout, because obviously those are things that, you know, females are always very particular about. I suppose you could translate it to men who want to get rid of their boobs, their man boobs. But,
Yeah.
you know,
Fingertipfitness.com.
there you
Could
go.
do to have those really strong nails.
Yeah, I've seen some
And,
crazy stuff with people on their fingertips. Like, it just blows my
Oh,
mind
yeah.
what people are capable of doing on their fingers.
Yeah, like one finger and one thumb, and then doing like a planche push-ups or something
Oh,
like that. And you're
it's
like, what are
just
you
nuts.
even doing, mate?
Yeah.
Like what? That's just too far, isn't it? I think. Well, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's fucking awesome. But I think I wouldn't. I don't aspire to have that, to be at that kind of level where I'm. You know what I mean? Like a planche is a planche, like planche push-ups, planche presses, maybe that to handstand or something like that. You know, stuff like that. I'd be happy with learning, but I wouldn't. I don't see like a particular need for doing like 2-finger planches or something. You know what I mean? That stuff like that. It's just. It's not. It's a bit excessive for me. Like, it's not. I'm not saying you should never try and do that, because like, if you want to do that, then fucking go for it. You know what I mean? It would be awesome. Like seeing someone do that, I'd be like, yeah, man, that's fucking wicked. But it's just like I wouldn't be that bothered about it really. But that doesn't mean we couldn't make programs.
No, of course, but there'd be a trade-off somewhere, wouldn't there? You know, there's going to be a diminishing aspect of the performance because of compensating potentially for that, certainly early doors when you're getting used to doing it for the first time. And it's a very single-minded goal, so all the focus is on just being able to position yourself on your fingertips, or you know, as fewer fingertips as possible. So that it's something that would require a lot of consistency over time to maintain, because as soon as you just go back to doing normal stuff, that skill, because of just how high-end, you know, very tight niche aspect of it that it is, it's just going to drop back off, or you're going to find it very hard to come back up there if you don't do it for a couple of months. So it's something that you're going to end up having to pay a lot of attention to over time. Not to say you won't be able to do it, you just won't be able to necessarily do it to the highest possible level as you did before when you were working towards it very specifically in a program. So it's something that you'd have to continually pay a lot of attention to if you wanted to maintain it after all the work. So therefore, you kind of look at it in terms of your macro goals of performance, and you would probably say, well, yeah, it's a cool thing to do because it makes for a great Instagram shot or a YouTube video, but in terms of what returns it's given me longer term, is it worth it? Is it a good use of my time? And I'm continually amazed how much time people do find to train, because, you know, fair play. You know, I think
yeah, good on you guys, actually. Yeah, props.
Well, some people are
I'm still
monsters.
laughing at lean myths, to be honest with you.
Go and save that URL. Go and buy it somewhere.
I bloody love it. That's awesome.
So yeah, I just think, you know, for some people they do just have the time to you know, do a full training session in the morning and then do some smaller little bits and pieces like that, maybe of an evening, or, you know, vice versa, just to refine those little details, because that's what matters to them, and fair play. You know, for a lot of people, like we've talked about with time and doing things in the context of your real human life, that for a lot of people that's just beyond them, not because of they're not being capable of doing it, just purely because of the time aspect.
There are ways to get around it, like with some skill stuff though, like that you can. I always do like foam. Since we had that podcast about foam rolling, I've been well into my foam rolling.
Good man.
Been proper good on it. It's so good. And actually today my calves are in agony. And because I was doing like loads of like mountain climbers and shit like that yesterday, which I don't normally do, and I had a really heavy session on like loads of like jumping, like almost like basic kind of group fitness type stuff, where you're like high knees, like mountain climbers, like star jumps, you know, stuff like that. Lots of like on your toes, bouncing around, kind of quick, dynamic, kind of plyometric work, even reactive stuff. And so I knew it was going to happen, and like now it really hurts. I'm going to foam roll the shit out of it later.
I think with, I'm sure we've touched on it before, but with calves, obviously you can foam roll, that's great, but I would much more recommend a tennis ball or a lacrosse ball or something. Just helps get in.
I usually do both. Like.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the foam rolls. I think that's a mistake a lot of people do make, especially when they're not used to it. Is they will go straight onto a hard ball with their calves, and I do think it's better to do a bit of a roll around on the foam roller first, just to kind of almost prepare for the hard ball. So
yeah,
I mean, if you're used to it, you know, I mean, I've been using hard balls for years, but even now, if I don't do any hard ball rolling for a couple of weeks, you know, as soon as I reintroduce it, if I don't do a little bit of foam rolling beforehand to kind of loosen up where I can on the sort of the larger surface areas and just to kind of prepare myself for that sort of sensation, it can be quite a shock. So if you've never done any hard ball rolling and you just decide to jump straight on that instead of doing the foam roll for the day, you know, that could be something that could put you off hard ball rolling for the rest of your life. So yeah, general advice, proceed with caution. Yeah.
Well, I think the foam roller's bad enough. Like, I've tried with like tennis balls. I don't have a hard ball. I was thinking of ordering one, actually, getting one on Amazon. I don't really have a decent excuse for it. It's like a $5. Do you know what I mean? But I haven't done it either way. So
it's crazy, isn't it? It's like we talked about in the last episode about home training. Like, you know, the cost of foam rollers, hard balls, you know, general prehab tools. And we didn't actually talk about that much in the last episode, but that should hopefully go without saying that as part of any home gym setup, you know, foam rollers, prehab stuff. I'm not sure if we mentioned it, but, you know, it's just...
I was thinking of covering it, to be honest with you, but I think we went over the basics of the actual necessities for body weight training, and that's what it basically was.
Yeah, and just for the sake of it, for anyone listening, just in continuation of that, you know, foam roller, hard ball, and any other sort of things, you know, small bands,
acupressure mat,
anything that you're just going to use for any sort of mobility or prehab based work or even rehab based work. Around
stability kind of pad type little. I've got a little wooden one. It's so hard. It's easier on one leg than it is on two because it's only got like a tiny half ball. It's not like a big balance board that you see down gyms where it's like almost a half. It's got a full dome across the back surface, the bottom surface of the pad. This has just got a tiny little one in the middle. So when you have your feet on it on both sides, it's like even getting into it's really hard, and it like rolls around and stuff. But on one leg, you can kind of plant it straight over that ball in the center and have a much better light. But they're really good as well.
Yeah, awesome. But yeah, again, much like the equipment we discussed. In terms of body weight exercise, you know, all these things are so cheap now. You know, it used to be so hard to get hold of this stuff, even on, you know, services like Amazon and eBay, and they used to be relatively expensive. You know, I think you pay upwards of £50 for a decent foam roller, and now, you know, you can get them for under a tenner. It's crazy.
Mine was like £8.
Yeah, it's nuts. You know, the sheer volume, you know, the demand is increased, but obviously therefore the suppliers has come up to match it, and so many people are doing it, and especially because you've got a lot of companies that can do white label versions of these products because it's very hard to, I think, patent a lot of the technology, so to speak.
Yeah, and expensive to get new ones designed too.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great time to be a consumer. You know, that's an entirely different rant about my, you know, belief how we've all been conditioned to be consumers. But for stuff like this, which is essential to your health and well-being, then it's a great time because it's so accessible and it's so cheap as well. You know. So yeah, go out and buy these things because they will they will help you live a far better life. If nothing else, if you have no other possessions as far as a home gym goes, foam roller, hard ball, and you know the other sort of bits and pieces with regard to prehab and rehab work, because that's stuff that you do some of that every day, you're going to really feel the difference of it, regardless of whatever else you're doing.
Yeah, for realsies. And you can do it in front of the TV, which is good because you can fit it into your life like very, very easily. Like the amount of time people spend like watching something on TV, it's not hard just to like roll your legs out with the ball or whatever. You know, you can. It takes quite a while as well to do like stuff like foam rolling and using the ball because you're not just going back and forth like people imagine. You kind of go the length of the bone and the muscle and then come back to the most painful parts and just hold it there and really just grit your teeth and experience that pain while it like grinds out these knots against your bone in it. Essentially, you're like massaging it out, you're like squeezing it out through from the muscle between the bone and the foam roller, and that's kind of how it works.
Yeah, completely. It's funny, isn't it? Because I do that myself. Like whenever I'm trying to explain to someone how easy it is to do something at home, I'm like, oh, you can just do it while you're watching the TV. You can just do it while you're in front of the telly. I've done this for years, when I've tried to encourage people to do flexibility, mobility work at home, or even just some training. I'm like, you can do some press-ups while you're watching EastEnders. There's nothing to say that you can't just drop to the floor and do a little bit of activity rather than sitting on the sofa. But it's such an indication of where we're at culturally, isn't it? That, you have to kind of align getting someone to do something with, but you can still watch TV.
Yeah. You can still I think that's to make it seem like relaxing and like they don't have to like go all the way down the gym, and that's why doing like flexibility and mobility stuff is very, very good for that, is because it takes so little effort. If I said to you now, like, do 20 press-ups, you'd probably be able to kind of wind yourself up enough just to smash it out straight away, but a lot of people can't. And like, if I was just talking to anyone like down in an office, or like if someone's sitting at home on their sofa in their dressing gown and I say do 20 push-ups, they're gonna go no. I probably would. I don't when I'm watching TV or something, I'm not always foam rolling or always training. Do you know what I mean? So I like to relax as well. But when I am doing it, or if I kind of think, oh, I could just do this quick. Yeah. And then you start doing your mobility, you start using the foam roller. Next thing you're practicing your planche and your handstands, and it kind of slowly scales up because you start at like an easy point, which it's really nice as well. It's so you feel so good afterwards. It's not like it just hurts loads, like I'm implying. I mean, it is like being ground up in a meat tenderizer machine of some kind. And it's the same with the acupressure. I recommend people do acupressure. It's like cheap acupuncture. It helps relax all the fascia, or the in the muscly, skinny type stuff, which creates a lot of tension, bad posture, and that fucks up all kinds of crazy shit. To put it very scientifically. Yeah. And that's basically just a mat covered in spikes. It's like lying on an Iron Maiden for 15 minutes or 10 minutes, and it is uncomfortable, but you get used to it, and it is really good afterwards. It's really nice, and you can do that in front of the TV as well. Oh, definitely. It was just my general observation that is a term that I use a lot, or a method to try and encourage people to do things at home is, do it while you're watching TV. And the fact that we don't actually say, oh, you can just do it while you're talking to your family. Yeah. Or, you can do it maybe even while you're reading a book, because you can theoretically do some foam rolling while you're reading a book, but we always reference it to the thing that we know probably 99% of people are doing at some point, specifically of an evening. They are watching something on telly, because that's just the massive part of the cultural zeitgeist now, isn't it? That's just a standard norm for everyone. But it's funny, I've listened to a couple of podcasts this week, because I know, a large part of my coaching philosophy is, meeting people where they are, and trying to walk them very slowly to where they probably should be in terms of performing optimally. And again, that's a very subjective process, because it's got to be right to them. And if something in their life is, that important to them that you're never going to be able to shift it, then there's no point trying, because you're just going to end up hitting more resistance, and ultimately you're going to fail to help them make the best of themselves within the context, as I've said before, of their human life. So I'm all about meeting people where they are and trying to help people build a health practice, a wellness practice, movement, nourishment, flow, rest, all those things around who they are as a person and what really matters to them, and their values and beliefs. So that's very, very important to me. But I've listened to some podcasts this week where I've started to notice a trend, because that was very, very much the kind of norm, I think, across the board. People were trying to do things very softly, and say to people, do it at your own time, at your pace. Forgive yourself if you slip. Don't be too harsh on yourself. Don't be too much of a critic. But I listened to a couple of episodes of different shows that I listened to this week, and the people talking about these were sort of spiritual teachers. They were people very deep embedded into the sort of esoteric world of talking about wellness and mindfulness, spirituality, consciousness, and they were sort of sharing that, they think we need to stop babying people a little bit. They were a bit more fierce in their approach. It was saying, we shouldn't let people accept this as the norm of their reality. We shouldn't let them accept, endless box sets and tons of time
on devices and whatnot. On day one we should try and really get into people's minds, because they know, their truth, if you really get into it, is that they know that's not the best way to spend their time or their energy or their focus, their attention, any of those things, their most valuable resources. So it was interesting to just hear people who were very traditionally, as I say, very spiritual, very calm, but they were being a little bit bolshy about it, and not in a preachy sort of way, but just in a, this is what we owe to the people that we serve, is to actually call them out a little bit, and not necessarily say, like we were just doing, oh, you can do some foam rolling while you watch TV. You would say, do some foam rolling because it's good for you. I'm not going to tell you how and when to do it, and I'm not going to try and make it easier on you saying do it while you're watching TV, but I'm going to say you only have to do it for 10 minutes, and that's a good thing. And actually you may be more beneficial doing it in a room quietly in silence, because that then feeds into your mindfulness practice as well, because you're not consuming more information subconsciously or consciously while you're doing it. It's actually a time for peace and calm, and it's a good opportunity to maybe combine almost a slight degree of meditation alongside some movement as well. But anyway, that was just something I thought I'd share, because that's a slight shift in sort of mindset and general consciousness that I hadn't really noticed before, but it's funny that it came up about 2 or 3 times this week from different people.
Yeah. Oh, I think it matters as well. Like, you can't just be like, oh yeah, like think positive and shit'll change. At some point, you've kind of got to pull your finger out and like do the grinding part, and get into it and actually do the work, put the work in. Well, I think even when it comes from a spiritual perspective, do you know what I mean? You've got to be that intent. You have to have an intention. You've got to like mean it, and you've got to like get it done in the. If you're going to do it, you might as well do it in the best way possible. And if that is doing it, like combining it as like a mindfulness and being like just in that moment doing the foam rolling, then maybe that would be a better approach.
Yeah, definitely. And look, I think if you're trying to spread a broad message, as we are sort of here with this podcast, then yes, you would be saying, look, spend less time watching TV, spend more time meditating, moving, focusing on how to optimize your diet and your relationships and all these other things that are ultimately going to make your life filled with more meaning rather than less, and certainly less distraction. But I also feel that when you're talking about it in a coaching context, i.e. working one-to-one with someone, you don't go all in on that stuff on day one. You understand that through the process of the coaching and what you're doing with that individual. And obviously I'm talking much more broadly here than just movement. I'm talking about the whole lifestyle aspects of how that feeds back into your health.
Yeah.
You walk someone through that still. So you want to get them to that point. You don't, if you've been working with someone, for a variety of weeks, months, or even years potentially at this point, you're not still pandering to the, oh, you can do this while you watch TV. You would hope that throughout that process with you, they've slowly moved away from spending their time, or certainly an excessive amount of their time doing that. I'm not anti-TV, by the way, just so we're clear. Like, I'm quite happy to watch TV. I sometimes even have TV on in the background while I'm working, because it's just...
But not recording the podcast.
Not recording the podcast, no, the TV's off quite right now. But, it's just background noise, isn't it?
On mute.
I have the news on because I just like to sometimes know what's going on in the world. And if I sat and watched the news for an hour and, before, and then didn't do any work because I'm trying to watch the news, then I lose an hour of work time or lose an hour of foam rolling time. So yeah, watching the news, there you go, perfect example. Watch the news, catch up with what's actually going on in the world while you're doing your foam rolling. So there's, I suppose, a good example of when you should watch TV when you foam roll. Anyway, that seemed like a bit of a rant, so let's move on, shall we?
All right. You know what, right, mate? Right now, in this exact moment, my shoulders and like my chest are killing me. So what could I do with like a tennis ball or an exercise ball to kind of really help those? Because I think it's quite obvious with foam rollers and exercise balls, with your legs, it's kind of obvious what you can do.
Sure.
But when it comes to kind of more your trunk around your shoulders, much more complex joints, it can be a bit more difficult and awkward to do for a start. But also, like, especially when I use the foam roller and stuff, I always find that it doesn't almost work.
Yeah.
It doesn't have as simple effect as if I was even doing my arms. Like, you can do your arms with a foam roller, obviously, just like your legs. But I think with my core, the main part of my body, I struggle with that so much. So what advice do you have for me / listeners on that front?
So as far as foam rolling the upper body, the areas that you can get the most benefit or feel the most benefit in the upper body are, the most obvious one is the sort of up the spine. So just any, laying on top of the roller, rolling from top to bottom of the spine just to loosen out predominantly the erector spinae muscles that sit either side of the spine, particularly in the lower back as well, because they do tend to get quite tight and inflamed throughout the course of the day because they're the ones working hardest to keep you upright. So, and obviously then if you sit down for an extended period of time and lean forward a lot, they can get very tight and uncomfortable as well. So that's a very obvious one that's quite easy for most people to do. In fact, it's one of the first rolling exercises I'll show people because both feet are planted on the floor and you're effectively just rolling up and down it on your back. So as an introduction, it can be quite fun and enjoyable and not shock people when they're using it for the first time. Then as an extension of that, it's a good opportunity to use it to extend particularly the thoracic spine, so bum on the floor in that same position and just leaning back, because while it doesn't immediately hit any soft tissue, just opening up those vertebrae in the top half of the spine can actually have a knock-on effect to help release tissue, certainly release facet joints in the back, just to help have a knock-on effect to help loosen up a little bit and allow you to then go and roll into the soft tissue and just have that multitude of benefits from mobilization as well as obviously then flexibility in the soft tissue itself. So those are the obvious ones with the roller. And then you also have your lats as well, so just effectively rolling onto your side and then trying to work up and down the lats, so pretty much from the bottom of the rib cage up to about halfway down the back of the arm on that side, paying particular attention to the crease where your shoulder is, because that's where you'll probably feel you can get the most pressure into it, and also you'll find there's probably more tension than anything else, because that's where a lot of extra contraction in terms of eccentric and concentric movements are going on, because as your shoulder or your arm moves up and down through, say, a pull-up position or a shoulder pressing, handstand pressing position, that's where fibers are getting probably that little bit more engaged, rather than say the rest of the lats where the further down your back you go, there's probably a little less contractile intensity, should we say. It's more isometric based, where they're holding and supporting the trunk. So lats can be good. In terms of then getting into smaller tissue groups, so traps, supraspinatus, around the shoulder blades, rhomboids, all that sort of area, so upper back, upper shoulders, up into the neck, that's where the hard balls and the tennis balls are really going to come into play.
Okay, because these are the bits I struggle with, like around the top, around my traps and my rhomboids. And
most people do. So the best thing for that is really quite simply putting the tennis ball between you and the wall. And then getting, I normally tend to do it in a slightly sort of squatted position, so I sort of take the weight onto my legs and then just push back into the wall. If you're upright, you kind of find you can't move around as freely. I like to kind of have a bit of a flexion to the knees and hips just to kind of sit into it, and then really just try and pinpoint the area that feels the most responsive, where there's a trigger point, there's an area that feels that little bit more responsive and tender in terms of the discomfort, and just try and work around it in almost sort of circular movements, just vertical movements and then horizontal movements. So basically like making a cross, so go up and down, then left to right, up and down, left to right, and then just trying to work around into circles with it. Now, it's not an exact science, because sometimes you have to chase the fibre around a little bit, so you'll find the trigger points move or the ball just moves across it. But the best thing to do is get to a place where, starting light, because again, like we said before, ease yourself into it. Don't go for the maximum amount of pain straight away. Just work into it, allow the muscle to kind of loosen up in time. Don't shock it, because that could also have a knock-on effect to cause more problems as well, of create another trigger point or area of tension somewhere else in reaction to that. So just work very slowly around the area, and almost, have you ever had a sports massage?
No.
Okay, you should get a sports massage. But what you'll tend to find, a good sports massage therapist, physiotherapist, someone administering good trigger point release massage work, is when they find that trigger point in that area of sort of dense, inflamed tissue, they'll sort of work over it and almost push against it until they can feel it move under their palm, under their finger, their thumb, even their elbow in some cases if they're going really hardcore. So you just feel like you're almost ironing out the knots out of the tissue, like ironing out a dough. So same as where you get the knots in your ITB when you're doing foam rolling, just that kind of almost like a little golf ball or knot that you kind of roll over that just feels a little bit more dense. Just try and chase those around in the traps, the rhomboids, just working between the shoulder blade and the spine. If you get a golf ball, obviously it's smaller, so it can get right in there. Again, it's going to be harder, so just kind of be gentle with it. And the reality is it just takes a bit of practice, just finding about, what understanding, and this is where basic physiology comes in, and try and understand which direction the muscle fibers are running in any given muscle. So if they're more diagonal, if they're more vertical, and just trying to go with the fiber if you can, rather than too much against it. Just work through it, and you'll get a better understanding of how that trigger point is then going to get released out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Good. Are you having a drink there?
Yeah, I did have a little swig. Got me right in the act. I'm going to give it, as soon as we get off this, I'm going to give my traps and my rhomboids a nice squeezy up against the wall. It's going to be nice.
Yeah, I mean, start kind of lower down than you probably anticipate you need to with the ball, because what you'll find
your
is...
traps go really low down your back. I don't think a lot of people realise how far down they actually get.
Oh, it's just
huge. Just imagine the traps as like these top bits, but they are, like I say, they are huge.
It's a huge diamond, isn't it? It's, from the thoracic spine, I forget which vertebrae exactly, up to your shoulders and then up to your neck. It's just one big diamond. I was having a good conversation with a client of mine yesterday about activating mid and lower traps to relieve the tension in his upper traps. I was saying it's not just about getting massage and stretches and being mindful of your shoulder positioning in the working day when you're at a desk to relieve the tension in the upper traps. It's about doing very controlled retraction-based work to actually get those mid and lower portions of the trapezius switching on, so that your default isn't always to just overactivate the upper traps.
Yeah. And use the rhomboids instead of like activating those traps too.
Yeah, or just using muscles lower down the back, incorporating the strength from other areas rather than travelling everything upwards, which is the kind of standard that a lot of people, unfortunately, now go with. It's just an automatic position that everyone's shoulder girdle just gets elevated and the shoulders end up coming up to the ears.
Their ears.
Yeah, and it's sad really, because I've worked with people endlessly where they can't move their shoulders without elevating the whole shoulder. So you say to them, hold your shoulders down, and to be clear, there was a time, me personally and personal training in general, where everyone was obsessed with shoulder retraction, shoulder depression in particular, so i.e. pulling the shoulders down, which in and of itself can cause a lot of problems. You do still need strength and stability in the upper portion of the trapezius. If you start forcing everything down, it's going to start creating more pressure around the neck, more tension and other weaknesses that are going to become problematic. So you're still creating an imbalance by obsessively ignoring the upper traps. It's just a different kind of pain and problem that you're going to get versus what 90%, 99% of the population have when they're overactive and overstressed in their upper traps. So again, overused word, but balance is really important here. But going back to the rolling aspect, it's just going to take a bit of time to feel into it. So my advice to you and certainly anyone listening is don't give up on it in the first go, because it can be a bit frustrating. The ball kind of
finding like the right way to move around it as well. That I find was, especially when I first started like foam rolling, it was a bit awkward because I knew how to do like lats and stuff and legs, but and like kind of your mid and lower back. But I like I say, initially it took a bit more time to kind of really feel it working. Yeah,
definitely. And when you're using a lacrosse ball or a tennis ball or cricket ball, golf ball, whatever it is, it's a round surface, and if you're positioning it between you and the wall, it's going to drop on the floor. If you don't have the right amount of pressure, you're going to find it a bit difficult because you're not in as much control of exactly where it's placed. It will kind of roll up over the top of your shoulder when you're trying to get into your upper trap. So obviously use your body at different angles slightly. So if you're trying to get right into the upper traps, you're going to have to kind of angle yourself a bit so your bum and your lower body's maybe a bit away from the wall, and you're pushing almost vertically with your torso up into the wall, if that makes sense. So just play around with it. It just takes practice. Even now, after all these years of doing it myself, I'm still not perfect. The ball falls on the floor, it pops up over my shoulder. It just doesn't
You're just
always...
better at catching it when it pops up.
Exactly.
Snatch.
You just know where it's coming.
Straight back down there.
We also know how high up to go. You can feel it, like, okay, it's that close to the edge of my shoulder now. If I roll any more in that direction, I'm going to lose the ball, so I'll just reset it or just push it back down. Or equally, just do it with the opposite hand positioned over the top of the shoulder.
Yeah.
So you've always got that kind of limit point where it's just going to, once it's got to your hand, you can't go any higher anyway without losing the ball. So don't get frustrated with it, because it just takes a little bit of time to really drill it down.
Yeah, cool. Well, there you go. A bit of homework for me. That'd be quite nice.
Yeah, enjoy that. I'm actually, all this talk of rolling, I now want to go and get a tennis ball and go and do some rolling.
Yeah. I just feel like we should just call it off now. Let's just go and do it.
Yeah. We should do one episode just on phone whilst rolling. You just in the background, just out.
Yeah, it'd be gritting our teeth while we're trying to talk and stuff, or just screaming wildly like. Ah!
Yeah, it might come off as though we're doing something else though, so probably best avoided.
Well, we'd have to do it on video, so there's always footage, evidence.
Yeah, but if someone's listening to it on audio for the first time, a new listener to the podcast, they go, "Oh, this looks interesting. Let's hear what these guys are doing." So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we can think about it. We don't have to do it tomorrow.
Hey, look, I never say never. Avoid absolutes. I'm open to everything. At least once.
We can test it out. Careful who you say that to.
Oh no, that's free invitation. I'll consider every offer.
Yeah, well, I think you've got to consider it, haven't you?
Well, exactly. Doesn't mean you have to say yes, but remain open-minded.
Yeah, cool. Right. So, anything else really that we kind of want to go over? We've gone through quite a kind of in-depth on the old kind of fixing-y-uppy kind of. My words have just gone completely. So we've done loads of like rehabilitative kind of stuff today.
Yeah, that was actually cool. It was a little bit unexpected. In fact, when we got on this call, in advance of getting on in this recording, I was kind of expecting you to do more of the talking today, but I feel like I've dominated a little. So
yeah. You
can talk.
It's nice though. It was nice to have you give us actionable stuff we can do, like with a tennis ball. Most people have a tennis ball around the house if they don't have a foam roller, and it's I think there's loads of stuff we can give a go. Particularly me, that I need it right now, so it's really handy.
Yeah, I mean, what I love about this stuff is there is no hack, there is no clever workaround or time optimized version of it. It's just graft, and I always find, especially working for myself, trying to build businesses, I always find the parallel between health, fitness, the maintenance and care of your body as a wonderful parallel to business, or even your career. You don't have to be a business owner. Just work in general. Whatever it is that you're doing to fulfill your purpose or to create some degree of meaning in your life. All the good stuff, the stuff that really matters. It's generally quite simple, and it generally centers around just putting in the hours, putting in the hard work, a little bit of suffering. A little bit of pain, and that's it. There's always going to be people going, "Oh, if you do this form of exercise, you'll never need to roll, stretch, whatever again." Even people who do yoga can benefit massively from extra mobility work. Particularly the prehab stuff that we've talked about, the rolling, tennis ball, foam roller. They're not, just because they're super flexible, and they're advanced yogis, doesn't mean they can't still, because of the nature of doing intense loaded movement, albeit under body weight, doesn't mean their body's not going to respond like any other human body and get tight, get knotted. Certain things become a little bit more dominant, and therefore imbalances are created. So there is no kind of perfect strategy for absolutely everything. Trying to graft and work and challenge yourself in different ways across a variety of different things is generally going to give you the greatest returns in the long run. It's just time and work. Simple as that. So unfortunately we can't give people pretty easy, simple ways of doing this, but hopefully it's stuff that they can take away and actually utilize.
Well, I think that is the kind of the easy way, isn't it, of like helping with muscle soreness, like tight muscles. Like that is the easy way to do it. Get your foam roller, get your tennis ball, and do a little bit of self-myofascial release or massage.
Well, yeah, and like a lot of information out there, and I draw the parallel with the sort of business entrepreneurial world. Time and again, I've struggled with, is it worth, even doing this podcast, because there are other people out there talking about body weight and calisthenics, and I don't want to do something just because I'm thinking, well, it's good to have a podcast because this furthers my own ends, because it's a marketing channel, it's a way by getting information out into the world. I want it to actually be something that people are going to find useful, and I've had that feeling, like a lot of people have, I'm sure, in the past, who have tried to set up a podcast, a blog, a vlog, or even just sharing content on just normal social media channels or other sort of platforms. where they think, well, there's other people already saying this. You know, the information's there. If people want to find it, then it's there for them. Why do I need to repeat it?
Yeah.
And the way I see it, because of some of the great people I pay attention to, and who I find the most inspiring, is first and foremost, we're all just building on standing on the shoulder of giants. We're all just trying to add a little bit more to the conversation, and conversations about human development, performance, be it physical, mental, spiritual, that's been going on for thousands of years. There's not a lot of difference between, say, what the likes of a Tony Robbins is saying versus what a Marcus Aurelius or a Seneca were saying back in Greek civilization.
Yeah.
It's just an extension, it's an adaptation, and an adaptation predominantly in relation to whatever the modern culture, modern civilization is, exactly. And what I realised, though, is, and again, especially in the information age, is that there's a necessity for people to put out more and more of, even if it is very, very similar information, as long as it's the right information with the right intent and it is good quality, usable information. Because I look at it and say, well, I'm halfway through talking to you about foam rolling, I'm saying all this stuff, and I just think, my God, if there might be people listening to this that have heard this on 10 other podcasts, but whereas before that may have made me think, oh, well, I'm probably boring them, I thought, well, actually, no, I'm hopefully just reaffirming what other good coaches are saying, because then once you've heard this thing from 10 different people who you maybe respect, or whether you respect them in terms of their expertise or just respect them because you think their ethics or the level of authenticity they're providing aligns with your own, it means that it's probably right. It's probably the thing that's going to work. So, that's just me saying that I'm glad that we're sharing this stuff, and we are. If it does sound a little bit boring and a bit more obvious and stuff that you maybe have heard before, then good, because it probably means it's right.
Yeah, and if you would prefer to hear us talk about something else, then bloody let us know.
Yeah, exactly.
Send us a message if you've got a question. Just ask us, and we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
We'll give you an answer.
Because we'll talk about a lot of stuff. Like, we'll talk about coffee. We'll talk about reading. We'll talk about
coffee,
gardening. There's nothing. Like I said, be open-minded. There's nothing I wouldn't happily discuss here and do a bit of research on. I'm a bit of a knowledge addict, and that doesn't mean I know a lot of stuff. It just means I like to read a lot of different things, whether I absorb that information and hold it long term. I think my brain is a better processor than a storage unit. Then cool, go for it. Whatever you guys want to hear, whether it's training related or nutrition related or something about museums and libraries, bring it on.
Oh man, I wish I had a good museum story now.
I actually went to, I didn't go to any of the, that is probably the greatest sin of my recent trip to New York, is we didn't make time to go to any of the museums, and you've got some great museums in New York. We did go to the public library, which was quite an inspiring building.
Closed for the weekend.
Honestly, it's the library, the building, like a lot of major cities, the history of the building alone is fascinating. But we didn't go to the museum, so I think that's high on the list for the next trip, because I don't know about you, but especially living near to London, I do feel this urge to do more things that are kind of slightly more cultural. Go to galleries, museums, because it's all there. We've got it on our doorstep. It's actually awful that I haven't done more of it in my life. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, maybe that should be your kind of your holiday schedule.
There we go. Maybe we can do a podcast in the British Museum at some point.
Yeah, we should avoid the library for that, I think.
Yeah, I'm sure you have rooms where you can talk, so we might get away with it. Anyway, we're waffling now, aren't we?
Just whisper the whole one. Hi, welcome to the More Than Lifted podcast. We're in the library. What?
Yeah, I bet that'd go down a treat. So, shall we wrap this party up?
Yeah. Should we do rock, paper, scissors to finish then? Wildcards are back on, obviously.
Yeah, I think so. Wildcards are predominantly live. I think wildcards just, the only time they don't work are in person.
Yeah, because it's
you kind of need
you don't
the
have the hand gestures for it.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, cool. Ready? After 3, 4, 3, 2, 1,
Neutral
Orion.
What?
I've gone for a constellation this time. Beat that.
Oh dear. Orion. Okay. Well, I went with NutriBullet because once again, as in keeping with previous efforts, I had no idea, and I just called out the first thing that was in front of me. And as I'm actually doing some standing work in my kitchen at the moment. I saw the NutriBullet in front of me, so...
NutriBullet. I think I win that one, mate.
I don't know how you can even begin to ascertain a battle between a constellation and a food process. But I'll give it to you because I got to do the outro last week. So let's say fair enough, you've gone stellar or interstellar, whichever way it works out. Yeah. So you can have it. Just don't mess it up because you've gone
another one
big.
for the Rhys tally. All right, cool. So guys, if you like what you heard, hit subscribe, share it with your mates, tell everyone all about us. We'll be really happy about it, and we'll probably say thank you if you let us know. Leave us a review and a rating, and check us out on the socials. Coach Thatch, More Than Lifting, almost everywhere. If we're not there yet, send us a message and let us know, and we'll create an account maybe. And then we'll be there as well. So awesome. If you have any questions, just send us a question. Cora, Twitter, direct message, email us, carrier pigeon, whichever one you fancy. Prefer the pigeon really, because we could probably make a barbecue or something. Not that we'd really eat it, but we could feed it to someone else.
Why are we killing and cooking a pigeon?
Well, because the people have sent us questions via it.
But can we not just send it back?
We'll send our replies back via carrier pigeon. We won't eat them. And that was about it. Check out the 28-day transformation if you want to get started with calisthenics training. morethanlifting.com/28transformation for that. We got the 100 push-up challenge still going. Week 3, it'll be week 4 when this comes out. So week 4, even crazier. Check out that. It's just 100 push-ups, 5 sets of 20, really good times. And Chris has got loads of stuff. So check out Chris. Chris, is Christopher Thatcher live yet?
It will be as of this episode going live. So,
oh, really?
Yes.
So check out christopherthatcher.com/sexy to see Christopher Thatcher naked. If you're a girl, add me on Snapchat, Rhys T. Morgan. And that's it, mate. I think I covered all bases then.
You definitely covered all bases, 100%.
Okay. Well, guys, until next week, we'll find something else to talk about. It'll be really insightful and entertaining, hopefully. If it isn't, let us know. Send us a message on Twitter or email or carrier pigeon. And until next week, love. Keep in touch with yourselves.
See ya.